Okay, so our assessments are aligned with each subject's year at a glance, so that every unit has at least 2 assessments in there. These usually run about every 3 and 6 weeks. We have some flexibility in there as well, so everything's really aligned with the standards and the scope and sequence as we go through the year. Every time we give assessments, we data dialogue over that. We've experimented with 2 different ways to data dialogue as far as timeline goes. We were doing data dialogues immediately after the assessment, but we realized that the piece we were missing was the student feedback piece. So what we've done now is we will assess maybe on a Thursday and we'll data dialogue on a Tuesday, so that teachers have the opportunity then to, when they're reviewing that assessment in class, they're now also collecting student feedback in different ways, and that student feedback becomes part of our data dialogue and helps drive our action planning and our tutoring groups and our RTI and everything, along with the data that we're pulling based on the standards.
All right. Describe in detail this student feedback. This is something.
So the student feedback happens in a few different ways. Some teachers have used some lead forward strategies, like the 3-2-1 paper, where students write, 3 questions. I can't remember the order of it. 3 questions they got right that were challenging, 2 questions they got wrong, 1 question that they want to go over. They can kind of change what those questions are, and so students will often write in there. A lot of times teachers will let students confer over certain questions based on the data, the lower scoring questions, so students, before they know the right answer, get together and have some academic dialogue over what they think the correct answer is, do some persuasion of other people in that group, and then the teachers walking around with notes, listening in on these conversations. Another way is that teachers just get some kind of observational feedback. Sometimes whole group feedback, sometimes it's on chart paper, and we're talking about certain lower level questions and where did we go wrong, why did we pick B over A. Sometimes they'll do the 4 corners. I mean, basically they're really getting flexible with the different strategies they run to have students review the assessment, and then getting more specific about collecting the conversations and the feedback from students over that assessment. And then that is taken into account in our data dialogue when we're having those conversations.
So since teachers are collecting this data from student feedback in different ways, how do they coalesce it into something to bring to data dialogue? So
before, we'd be looking at a question, for example, and we'd say, okay, so 56% of your students chose C and 24% chose A. What's the thinking behind why did our students go to A? What did we do in our instruction that took them there? When we didn't have that student feedback, a lot of times the answer was, I don't know. I don't know, because sometimes teachers are very much content experts, and so getting down to that student level and that direction of thinking can be tricky, because it's hard to see where they're going all the time and why they didn't get the right answer when it's so obvious to us oftentimes. So when we were running into that, that's when we decided to get the feedback from the students. So now teachers, that conversation completely changes. Well, when I talked to my students and I heard from them, I realized that they were making a logical connection to an earlier era instead of the current era that we're on, because of the Explorer that's connected. So what we found was a lot of times students were really thinking in the right direction. They were just able now to pinpoint that missing link because of the student feedback piece. So it really honed our data dialogues into stronger, more specific action planning, because now we could incorporate what it is that the students were saying. And that was a piece that was missing early in the year.